Everybody, please grab a seat and we'll get started here. Pastor Mark, would you open us in prayer, please?
The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Gracious God, as the rain continues to fall gently outside, we are mindful of those facing much harsher climes than we face. The blessings we have, the joys we have, that the hardships we often face are not as bad as they could be. Lord, we give you thanks for your presence here with us today. May the rain that falls that we hear upon the roof be a reminder of our baptism and your grace and your presence falling into our lives. And Lord, may we be here this day open and honest with ourselves and with you. And may we dialogue in ways that lead us forward to better fulfill the mission you've given us to know Christ and make Christ known. Bless us in this time together. Be with those who are unable to be here, especially with those families that mourn this week, that we might be a rock and a fortress for them through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Mark. Thank you, everybody, for coming out here on this beautiful rainy day that we have. We really appreciate everybody coming here and hearing the exciting things that are happening here at Hope Lutheran Church. And so to get things started, I just want a little house cleaning first. This is going to be what we call a town hall meeting. I think this is the second or third one we've had. If you have any questions about anything at all, we will open up the floor for discussion. Please come up to one of these three mics that are here and state your name and then your questions, and somebody here from myself or the council or one of the pastors hopefully will be able to answer your questions for you. One of the main topics that we're going to talk about today is the third site, okay? Back in 2016, myself, Pastor Barry, Pastor Mark, and a few other folks went and talked to the villages about the opportunities that lied out there for us to even consider having a third site. At that point in time, there was nothing available. None of their development programs were in set, but he said, you know, we'll keep you guys in mind as to what's going on and so on and so forth. And as time went on, we kind of lost contact with him. Then we called back and talked to Gary Lester, who is the vice president over there at the villages. Very super good guy. And we talked to him quite a bit. And he still kept us in mind. Well, then, lo and behold, we again met with him again because we were still anxious to wondering what was going on. So Pastor Mark and myself and Bob Odell and a few of the members of the council went over there and talked to him and says, yes, we're interested in a swap where we would swap the House of Hope property for a piece of property unknown at that time where it'd be. Time went on and on and on. Went back to him again and says, yes, we have a piece of property that is just perfect for you. It'll be in a prime location of what our plans are south of 44. We really got excited. We were going to, at that point in time, swap the land that we had the House of Hope on for this piece of property, which is the piece of property we're talking about today, which is south of 44, right before you go over the bridge to the turnpike. If you look to the right-hand side, it's right over there. And there's going to be us. There's a whole retention pond and then some kind of a medical facility. And they're going to put a boulevard right in front of it, which would be much like Buena Vista. So we really got excited and all excited, and then all of a sudden the swap was off. And I think I told everybody in the congregation that bad news. Well, we didn't know at that point what to do. You know, they wanted $2 million for the piece of property, and that was going to be a tough nut for us to crack to spend $2 million just on a piece of land. Okay, and then we had to put a church on it and so on and so forth. So we called them back, got our lawyer involved, and called them back, and we literally walked into the guy's office, and our lawyer did most of the talking and said that, we're interested in still working with the villages. We're still interested in that piece of property, but we're interested in a swap. We want to swap the House of Hope property, the Wildwood property, for this. At that point in time, Brian Hudson, who was their attorney, says, "Excuse me." So he got up, left, and came back in 10 minutes, and he says, "Let's talk swap." So here we are today. Everything is in that mode right now. The original plans when we bought, the House of Hope was kind of like not only keep the House of Hope going as a rehabilitation center, but there the opportunity to maybe build in a church over there. Well, that really wasn't going to be feasible because of excess roads and things like that. To get to it, you'd have to go all the way around like you do with House of Hope property is kind of isolated and tough to get to, which is great for a rehabilitation center, but not so much for a church. So anyway, we are right now in we have signed the contract, and in the contract it states that we need to have congregational approval and some other things that I will go over with you shortly. But nothing will be done without the congregation approving the swap, if you will. So, having said all that, one of the biggest concerns that everybody has was, what about the House of Hope? Big concern for everybody because it's been just a wonderful ministry for us. We saved a lot of lives, broken a lot of chain of addiction with a lot of men, and we will still continue to have it be one of our ministries at Hope Lutheran Church as we go on. We will continue to have the House of Hope. The only difference being, it'll be in a different location. They were given notice on January the 15th that they had 6 months to evacuate the property. They knew this because it was in our lease. When they signed the lease, they knew that if we ever sold the property, that in 6 months, they'd have to evacuate the property. So, here again, the concern about the House of Hope. I have asked Mary Starkey, who is the president of the board of House of Hope, to come and speak to everybody, to answer any questions anybody might have, and to put everybody to rest assured that the House of Hope will continue, so on and so forth. Mary, would you please come up here?
Thank you. As Len said, my name is Mary Starkey, and I serve on the board for House of Hope. In the very near future, one of us from the board will be sharing our new address of House of Hope. But that's not going to be today because we don't know that new address yet. So instead, on behalf of the staff and the students and the board, I'm here today to say thank you to everyone from Hope Lutheran Church. Because of all of you, we've had a beautiful campus for our students since 2014, with a huge garden that supplies us with fresh vegetables. Because of you, hundreds of people know about this ministry who didn't know about it 4.5 years ago. Because of you, our students have experienced God's grace in action because of your generosity and your kindness. And most importantly, because of you, and by the grace of God, over 200 men with life-devastating addictions have entered our program. And I'm happy to say that over 60% have returned to their families healed and whole. Amen. We have a lot to be thankful for. And we're also excited for the next chapter of House of Hope. As I just mentioned, we don't know our new address yet, but God knows, and that's enough. And we can walk down that path because you've shown us how God can inspire people to step forward and help this ministry. So one day, one of our board members will stand right here and share that new address with you. And until then, we're asking for your continued prayers and your support. And we want you to know that we're keeping you in our prayers and thanking God for the opportunity He's given you to enlarge the ministry of Hope Lutheran with your new campus. We already know it's going to be wonderful because we've seen firsthand what this church can do. So again, we thank you. We promise to keep you updated on our progress with our new move, and we pray all God's blessings for each of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Okay, I don't know how many of you have had the opportunity to look at the contract that we have with the villages. A lot of it, in my opinion, is boilerplate. Some of the main points in that whole contract is we have a 30-day due diligence where we're doing due diligence on the piece of property that we're talking about, and the villages is doing their due diligence on the Wildwood property as well. We all know that Megason is a road that's going to go in front of our church, and like I stated earlier, it's going to be a type of a road. It's going to be like Buena Vista. It's going to be a main thoroughfare to enter our church. So that's one of the real pluses. Our only cost in this whole situation is that we have swapped the two properties. They have any church property that goes in the villages, their price is $2 million. If it's 5 acres or if it's 10 acres, they're all the same. They're $2 million. We will have the pleasure, whenever we decide we want to build out there, probably the only church out there for a while, because they have no other future plans to put another church out in that area at this point in time. Now that could change, okay? But at this point in time, so our cost is going to be $20,000. And the $20,000 is going to be to run the utilities under Megason Boulevard to our property. The utilities are going to be on the other side of Megason, and they decided that they have agreed that we could split the cost with them, and they would charge us $20,000 to run the utilities to our side across the street which is really, really very expensive, because they tell us it's like $50,000 just to put a shovel in the ground over there when you go start doing things like that. The other cost that we will have will be the extension of the golf cart path. They got a bridge, I believe, that's going over 44, and the bridge is going to be some 440 feet to the left of our property. So we will have to pay approximately $40 a square foot to get a golf cart path from that part over to our church. It's about 440 feet, or about $17,700 is approximately the cost. They haven't given us a direct quote, but they thought that was probably going to be what it's going to cost. The other thing that you may have seen in there is that there is a family that lives over by the House of Hope called Danny Gongon. And Danny has been there for a long time. He has a little over an acre worth of property, and he crosses our land to get to his house. So part of the thing that we need to do is to get him to sign an agreement to eliminate that part where he won't be able to cross our property, but they will build him an access road to get to his property. It'll probably run along the fence there right over by the turnpike and then up. That hasn't been solidified. We're still waiting for the paperwork to come from the villages to present to him. We tentatively have talked to him about it, and he's in pretty much agreement to do that. So that's also in the contract. We obviously need to have congregational approval. Nothing happens without the congregation saying, yes, this is what we want to do. The other thing that Pastor Mark and myself have been working on is that we're going to start worship service over in the Rohan Center. They've approved us to have start services over at Rohan. Probably, don't quote me. Depends who you talk to, sometime in the spring, not too distant future. And I think that's going to be a real plus. The other plus is that across the turnpike from where our location is going to be, they're building another recreation center a regional recreate called Evergreen. Everglades? Ever something. Okay. And we will be able to, if in fact, and I guess that's going to be open in the fall. It'll be open in the fall. If in fact we want to, we could move over to that location, which puts us closer to Finney and so on and so forth, everything that's going on out in that part of the country. So a lot of exciting things going on. We've had many meetings, not only with the villages, but the council and with the pastors and getting everybody's idea. So it's something that we're really excited about, that we can take it. They valued the piece of property that we have at House of Hope at $2 million. Okay? To give you some idea, when we purchased that property, we paid $669,000 for that property, and we put in about $235,000 into renovating the building, which the guys and the gals in this congregation, headed up by Mike Slating, have done just a phenomenal job giving these guys a great place to live. So we have about $900,000 invested in the Wildwood property. So we think that getting $2 million for it, switching it for a piece of property that's in a prime location is a pretty good situation. So somebody may ask or questions about, well, why do we need a third site? We got Lake Weir, which is really starting to bloom and blossom. Really a lot of exciting things going on there. I don't know if you're aware or not, but last Sunday we worshiped 104 people there. And when we took that over, they were worshiping 24. So we've taken it a long way. We've really only just begun to do things out there with the many opportunities that are there. Plus, so now you look at the third site, the opportunities that we have out there. I can tell you for a fact, and a couple of the folks here from New Covenant, they started their service out. I think they opened up their doors of their new church, and they're worshiping now, what, 600 or 700 people on a Sunday. Yeah, so the way things are growing, that's where the growth is going to be. We all know that we're kind of stymied here. There's no way we can grow. We're bound by some of the village ordinance about things we'd like to do, and we will be out there as well. But, you know, we can't grow anymore here because of the parking. We looked at one point in time to build a parking garage, and it's $40,000 a slot to build a parking garage. Presently, right now, we can park 230 cars in our parking area right now, and we get 65 or 85 parking spaces over here at Fairmont or Fairway on the grass. So we have a total of about 316. This new facility, building a building that's this size with the fellowship hall over in the new area, will still have 531 parking spots. So there's plenty of room for growth, plenty of places to park your car, and so we can have more things can go on there, like, you know, worship, after worship, have fellowship where you have coffee and sweet rolls and things like that. You know, Lake Weir does a great job every Sunday after they have fellowship, and everybody brings something and they eat, and you know, you're there for an hour with fellowship. It's just a wonderful thing. And we can't do that here because we tried it once with cinnamon rolls, right? And the parking was just, the phone was ringing off the wall. I come to church, there's no place to park, you know, people, and we used to get like 150 people in there, you know. So it's a great community thing. So it's just, that's one of the reasons that we'd like to continue to move forward. And, you know, plus there's probably a lot of people, what we're finding more and more of is that the people that are moving down to the villages, and we kind of see that right here, it's becoming more ecumenical. You know, the Methodists are going to a Lutheran church, the Lutherans are going to a Methodist church, the Presbyterians, the Catholics, everybody is starting to go just so they go to church, because we're all Christians. So does it really matter? You know? So it's a real ecumenical thing. And if we can be one of the first churches over there, I mean, it's no telling what we can do. I mean, to know Christ and to make Christ known, are you kidding me? People over there might not know it. Plus, we have a lot of folks that live over there that come all the way over here to church. So we're going to have some folks that if they want to go to Rohan, we're going to start services there. We get 300 or 400 people there in a year or so going to Rohan. I'll tell you what, the opportunities are just incredible for Hope Lutheran Church. So we're expanding, we're growing, we're taking the word of Christ out, and we have the opportunity to do so. So, having said all that, please come up and ask questions. We're not going to bring mics to you. Up and ask questions. Yes, sir. Please state your name.
Larry McKenzie.
Hi,
I think
Larry.
it's on.
Okay.
I got one question. How many acres are we talking?
8.24.
8.2. And this property was originally what, 11?
This property is 6.
This is
A little
6?
under 6.
Okay. Okay, and one other question. Now we're talking about this swap, the new property, as being property for a church, or is this property for House of Hope to move to?
Definitely for the church.
Okay, for the church. So we don't know where House of Hope is going yet?
Not at this point in time.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You know, I would ask a question. I'm assuming there will be a rental fee for Rohan or whatever
No.
rec center? No. Oh, wonderful. Is there a time limit before we have to build on the land?
No.
Wonderful.
Richard Teese. Will we need to get approval of the Synod to buy the property or eventually to build the church on the property?
No.
Rob Lonergan. I want to make a comment and then I have a couple questions. I think this idea to expand south is a wonderful idea. And we've only been part of Hope for 3 years. And I hope that the charter members look at this as a similar opportunity to the way they looked at the opportunity to build a church those 20 years ago. And I hope that the new members also look at this as an opportunity, like Becky and I did, to join a growing church. It's the first time in our church life where we've been part of a growing church. Because like many of us, we come from other places where churches are contracting. So those are my comments. So I'm in favor of it. I am one of the few people probably that read the contract cover to cover. I'm impressed by the fact that it truly is reciprocal. And what I mean by that is virtually every clause that the villages expects of us, we expect the exact same thing of the villages. So like if you've bought or sold a house, you know, you've got time to have the house that you're going to buy inspected. They have the same amount of time to inspect the property they're going to get from us. The only two things that aren't reciprocal, and this is what my questions are about, is I noticed that there is a stipulation that requires the property really to be a church or have a daycare center or I believe a school. I think that's exactly what we think we would use it for. Should we decide not to build on that property, can we sell that piece of property as long as it's for that purpose?
We could sell it to one of the other 12 churches that would like that piece of property.
Okay. And then the other thing in here, which I'm not familiar with, is there's an Article 25, I believe, that talks about continuation of a Section 163 covenant between the villages and the city of Wildwood. And I didn't understand what that is.
I'm going to call on our resident lawyer to answer that, Bob. Oy vey.
I did my homework.
You did. Very good. The villages have entered into a development agreement with the city of Wildwood. And you will notice in the newspapers all the time, there's a notice that they're going to annex this property, or they're going to change the zoning to this property. And because the villages is an owner of all these, they need to go through Wildwood anytime they annex part of any other property to this development plan, or if they're going to change the zoning on their property in some other place, not contingent to our property. Theoretically, everybody who owns property has to agree to that. Well, right now, we may be the only other owner. And so the contract provides that when the subject matter of any of these annexations or rezonings or anything like that does not involve our property, we give them permission to basically vote for us, approval for whatever they're doing. That provision also provides, though, if there's any material change to what we are doing, they have to get our consent. So that really has to do with their development agreement with Wildwood for everything they're doing. And if we didn't do that, you know, every week we would be signing something that really didn't involve us.
Okay.
So that's it's the development agreement of the villages with the city of Wildwood.
Thank you. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Everybody get that? Okay. Good. Casey?
Casey Hargraves. Here, Hope Community people, are we going to help guide Pastor Malcolm, be beside him in finding a new place? And would he be looking for an existing area where there's buildings, or would we start from scratch? Are we going to help him?
Of course we're going to help them.
Uh-huh.
Mary, would you like to address that, or turn it over to Jean? Jean is the vice president of the board of House of Hope.
Yes, we are looking. We have been in discussions, obviously, with Lynn for a long time, and we knew that eventually this could happen. And so we have been looking at properties, and we've been looking at temporary facilities, what few there are at the moment. And so we're going to go down these paths for the next few weeks. We hope to be able to make a determination on where we're going. We've got some property. We did buy some school modules, office modules, that we can maybe get in place on property in time for us to vacate the property here in July. But at that point, that's all we can say definitively.
Thank you. Did I answer your question, Casey? Okay. Charlie?
Charlie Murray. Lynn, I have a question on the new church. Will that church have its own senior pastor and its own staff and run by itself, or will it run like we are working with St. John's now?
It'll run like St. John's is. Yes. Pastor Marco will be the lead pastor, and then he'll have pastors under him that will go to the different churches.
So Pastor Mark will be the lead pastor of 3 facilities.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we should have told you probably, huh, Mark? You didn't know that. Thanks, Charlie. Oh, I'm sorry. Were you next? I didn't see you over there. Donna.
Hello, I'm Donna Ford Vero, charter member of Hope Lutheran Church. And I was one of 4 people that helped get Hope Lutheran Church started. So we have been with my late husband and Tom and Pearl Langevin we went through some of these same things. We started Hope Lutheran Church at the La Hacienda Center, and then we moved to the Savannah Center. In both locations, we had fellowship afterwards, after the worship service, and we felt that was a very, very important function to go along with it. And I'm excited about having the same thing started at the Rohan Center. My questions are this. We have to come up with that $20,000 immediately to build that road underneath the Megason Road, or the utilities underneath the Megason Road. Does that include going into the property interior, or will that be an additional fee?
They take it to the interior, and we won't have to come up with the money until they start developing that particular area, and they haven't started developing it yet.
Okay, the infrastructure then will be in place before we start our building.
Absolutely.
Okay, and the villages has their, I don't know if they call it the Architectural Review Committee. Do they approve all of the building and the color and everything like they had to do here?
Absolutely.
We have to go through them. And following up on the last gentleman's statement, in the future, if Hope South would want to spin off and do their own, be an independent church, would that be a possibility for them so they could have their own pastor? I remember the passion that began with Hope Lutheran Church and the initial people that were here. And part of that initial ownership and passion really drove the church. And I think that we might be missing an opportunity if Hope South doesn't someday have the ability to feel that same thing.
That's a decision that the council and the pastors are going to have to make, and I would think that they have the same, as we do now, the same caring and the same love that we have between here and Lake Weir. The passion would be for 3 churches as opposed to just one. So they could go over there and worship and feel part of that, just like the folks at Lake Weir could. So that's a tough question to answer right now, but
I would just like to have an opening for that in the future, because when Hope Lutheran started, we had a part of the Mission 100 Fund, and that there were people from all around Florida who gave $100 a year. And the first year that we were setting up, they gave us almost $50,000 to get us started. And that was really a boost. Now, instead of having the Hope Mission 100 from the bishop's office, this new church has Hope Lutheran right here, kicking in a lot of help. And, but it did generate and motivate and give a lot of excitement down there.
What a legacy.
Thank you.
What a legacy we could have by taking this and having that third site, and the folks at Lake Weir and here help build that. Someday when we're all not here, what a legacy it would be. So yeah, I guess I don't want to address that because I really don't have the answer, because that's something we needed to talk about. But my opinion, my humble opinion, is that I think with one lead pastor and 3 pastors, other words, Mark's got it all worked out with St. John's and how we're going to do it at Rohan and so on and so forth. So, and it all falls under the leadership of Pastor Mark. So, yes, sir.
My name's Kevin Body. I apologize in advance for two things. First off, I didn't do my homework. And
Stay
so,
after school.
yeah. And secondly, I apologize because you're dealing with an engineer here, so bear with me. Because what could possibly go wrong? I'm just looking through a little bit of the contract. Someone had talked about the reciprocity between what the villages was doing, and in many cases we have to do the same, or would do the same thing. One of the questions that I thought of was, is there any improvements or changes we have to make to our property in advance before the swap?
The Wildwood property?
Yeah.
No, that's why we're doing the due diligence. They're doing a phase 1 study,
Well,
environmental phase 1.
Okay, thank you. But what I was more getting into was, it looks like the villages is said that they're gonna, and looks like they already have. They've already flattened the land with fill and stuff like that.
The third
Yeah,
site?
they've done the grading and stuff like
Yeah,
that. So
right.
so there was already known improvements that they were going to make to the property. Are we, assuming there's nothing in the due diligence, are we bound to do anything to the property in Wildwood to reciprocate, or as a
Right,
reciprocal?
no.
Okay.
They're going to come in and bulldoze it.
Okay. Second one comes to the Plata survey. It looks like on one side of here we got Florida's Turnpike, which is basically a right-of-way, and that one's already a done deal. But Megason Road, of course, is proposed, and its right-of-way borders one side of the property. And I can also envision that there could be some oopses along the way. Somehow something unforeseen comes up where Megason Road, it would still go through, because I saw a clause in there that they would give us access to 468 or something like that, if I remember correctly. But if the right-of-way to Megason Road changes, either adversely to us or positively, where we get a little more land, kind of like what happens? I guess I'm saying that it looks like this is obviously a surveyed border right now based on what they think the right-of-way is going to be. But if the right-of-way changes, meaning the border of our property would change, how does that get handled?
First of all, I don't believe that they're going to change it. I mean, this is the contract, and this is what the survey says. So they're under contract to do that, what that survey says. So they're not going to change Megason Road of any degree. But I think that's probably what the answer is. The contract is that's the survey. That's what it's going to be.
Okay, so there's really nothing in writing that say how our rights are protected in case something would come up that would change that, I guess is what I'm saying. That's what I'm asking.
Bob?
According to this contract and the survey, and we get to review the survey as part of our due diligence. But as part of the contract, you have the survey, and that's where they're saying the right-of-way is going to be. If that changes, that's going to require an amendment to the contract, or they are going to have to come back to us and ask us to agree to whatever change that may be. But right now, contractually, that's what we're expecting.
Okay, so it's fixed in point at this time, and if it changes, basically
They have
got to
to-
go make some tweaks or something.
Right, they have to
Okay.
come back to us.
Yeah, I figured it wasn't a very big deal.
Right.
Another one of the things said in here that they were going to either provide connection to or actually provide a retention pond on the property commensurate with, water displacement that you have because of the building. Would that happen to be the retention pond that's already appears to be adjacent to it, that we're just going to connect to it, or are they going to put another retention pond on the property? Okay, so that's the one that they're going to hook up to.
The contract provides in a certain paragraph that we have rights to use that retention pond. There are no plans or no requirements from the villages or anybody else at this point that we need to put a retention pond on our 8.25 acres, which is another benefit of the contract, because a lot of times when you buy some acreage, let's say you buy 10 acres, well, you may have to use 2 acres for a retention pond. We don't have to do that. and we will have the right to tie into their retention pond, and I believe that's the one that you see there.
Okay. Just one last question. Obviously, the cost of a church or whatever we put up there is going to be a huge capital expense. I guess just out of curiosity, how much did it cost if we took this church and put it on there with an expanded parking lot? Do we have a figure, ballpark figure, as to how much that would be, or how much did it cost us to put this one up?
Well, I don't know what it cost to build this sanctuary here initially, but I believe the fellowship hall was 2.5 million, 2.3. I'm not sure what this was. This was, built 19, 20 years ago. So, does anybody here have any idea what that was? Anyway, we're obviously at this point in time, Gary? 2.2, 2.6, and then the other one over there was like 2.3, 2.4.
So give or take about 5 million.
Yeah.
Give or take.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Do you know anything? Let me ask you a question. You know anything about geotech? We got some report we can't make hiding our hair out of. You know anything about that? Where they drill holes to make sure that the ground is sturdy enough to hold the structure. You know what I'm talking about? Being an engineer.
Not legally, I was electrical, but I mean, I think
Good thoughts.
I mean, I'm sure what they're looking at doing is, I would assume, is that, of course, how many tons does this building weigh?
Right.
They got to do bores into the ground to make sure that whatever calcium's underneath is going to hold it, and it's not going to.
Yeah, that's what we're going through right now. They've given us a report, and even Bob doesn't know what it says. So, yes, ma'am.
My name is Nancy Walker, and we've been talking about engineering and legal aspects of all of this, and I think it's a wonderful opportunity for Hope. But in the back of my mind, I'm concerned about the men that are there now and have been there, and what do they think of having to be. I feel like we're abandoning them. I know we're not, but how do they feel about having to move and have their buildings that they've worked hard at be torn down?
I can't answer that, Mary. I can tell you that where half of these men come from, any place is better than where they were, okay, whether it be jail or whether it was out in the street. So any place that they have that's a roof over their head where they get decent meals and a clean bed to sleep in is anything better than what they had before they came there.
Some of my friends have said it's the mission, it's not, the buildings, but I guess I still worry.
Well, yeah, and you know what? We're all worried. We're all worried. We all care. That's why, that's one of the reasons why we brought House of Hope into Hope Lutheran Church the way we did, because we care about the men that go through. And as Mary said, 60% success rate. That's 120 guys that are back out on the street, back with their families, back with their children, back with their parents, whatever it is. It's 60%, 120 guys. That's a very successful rate. Now the other 40, we either haven't kept in contact with them, whatever it may happen to be. But we care. We're not going to put these guys out on the street.
I know. I just want to know how they're feeling, and I think she can address this.
Yes, we have talked with the students. They know what's going on, and mostly what we told them is that, just what she said, it's about them, it's about the mission, and what we said to them is, look, this is just an address. What difference does it make what our address is? We're not leaving, the board's not leaving, the staff's not leaving. All of you at Hope Lutheran, we certainly hope and pray will stay with us. And so that's really what they needed to know. When you're going through recovery, any little hiccup can cause issues. So we've just tried to tell them it's all going to be fine. We've also said some of you will already be graduated by the time we need to move. So, they're doing okay because they know that we're staying with them and we're keeping them as informed as we can. We opened it up for question and answer, and we had one very funny one from Dale. He raised his hand and we said, "Okay, Dale, what's your concern?" And he said, when we move, can I please have my own room? No, you can't have your own room. Put your hand down. So they're doing okay. They just need to know we love them and care for them, and the mission's going to continue, and the address will just be the address.
Just, Dick Teese again, just a follow-up in regards to the geotech information. I was not an engineer or an architect or an accountant or any of that stuff, but for my work at Madison Gas and Electric a lot of years, I think it's very, very, very important that you get a qualified engineering firm to look at that information, maybe do testing of their own, also from an environmental standpoint to make sure, because if they put fill on the property, will that fill support the building that you want to build, that we want to build? We don't want to buy a pig in a poke. You buy property thinking to build a building, and when you drill the test holes, you can't support the structure. So it's important to get qualified information that will support what we think we're going to do in the future.
The Villages has drilled many, 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 many holes to see around that area, and everything has come out okay, without any problems. But they have given us a report. Like I said, we need to find somebody that can read it. Pastor.
I told Len when I came in, you see I got a little bit left of bronchitis, but I hope everybody leaves here as excited as I am. We talk about borings, we talk about measurements and all that. Talk about people. Many of you don't know me because you go to church on Sunday. I am a Seventh-day Lutheran. And I hang out here at 4 and sometimes 6 o'clock, and also at Lake Weir about once a month. I've been on staff for 15 years, so I've watched this congregation develop. Before coming on staff, I was an American Missions Director for the state of South Carolina. I was deployed staff out of Chicago. And so there were about 20 of us nationwide who would get together 4 times a year to decide where the church should grow. Now, I watched that even back then begin to diminish, that you couldn't put in new buildings with the little money that the national church had, but we had to restructure some old ministries. Down in Miami, for instance, where a very large old church, you know, we tried to retool it so that a Hispanic ministry could go in there. So the dollars for brand new starts like this are now non-existent. And I know 15 years ago, when I had the hand in 10 mission congregations, 5 of which were new: Hilton Head, Myrtle Beach, McCormick, Spartanburg, Living Springs, and know what it was like to watch them develop, meet in storefronts, meet in a school cafeteria where they hauled a trailer for 3 years to unload the altar every week, get everything ready. The only thing that was there were the cafeteria chairs. And it was a joy. That church today, and it also was involved in the trade of property, that church today now has about 900 members and 2 full-time pastors on staff. The one in Spartanburg, the same thing. We ended up paying $370,000 for the property. So before they could build, those people needed to pay off the property. But here's the key. When people move from one town to another, if they don't attend church within 3 weeks, they will not find a church home. That's national statistics. So what we're really talking about here are serving the people that are down there at Fenney and the other new villages that are growing faster than you can put your name on them. So I just hope this is an opportunity that God has laid at our feet. And it's a joy, I hope, that I'll be able to be a part of.
Thank you, Pastor Dean. Does anybody else? Yes, sir.
I do.
Good.
Good afternoon. My name is Joel Best, and I have a couple questions in a statement. One, what is the size of the land that House of Hope is on? The new land is 8.24.
That's correct.
So what's the size of the property at House of Hope?
It's about 28 acres, 27 and a half, 28 acres.
So we're trading 28 acres for a mere 8 acres.
Absolutely. You want to know the
Okay.
difference?
What? No, okay. The second is a statement. I'm on the Architectural Review Committee. The Architectural Review Committee has nothing to do with commercial properties. They only deal with residential properties. And therefore, yes, the new church or whatever will be reviewed, but it'll be reviewed by the village's development staff, not the Architectural Review Committee.
They have to approve it. The villages has to approve it.
Villages has to approve it, but it would not be the Architectural Review Committee. The next thing is Pastor Piper said, why are we not using the resources of the bishop and the church as a mission to get mission support, either from people or funds, as Donna mentioned, to help develop this? It seems to me that we as a congregation are having to manage and run 3 separate congregations. That's a lot of work that's being undertaken here, a lot of cost in developing a new church down there. And the other thing related to that is Rock of Ages Lutheran Church is in Wildwood, and they're building a new sanctuary now. They'll be moving it into their new building this summer. So I think there's going to be another church in that vicinity, and so will those 2 churches compete?
Not at all, because I think the ELCA is like, what, 6 miles apart they have to be? And we're like close to 10 from Rock of Ages.
So the bishop is aware of this property and this swap?
Mark and I are going to go meet with the bishop again as soon as he gives us an appointment to discuss that with him and some other things.
Joel, I just wanted to answer your question about money. They would never, ever look at us where we have a demographic that the average household income is above $66,000 per year. And you're talking about a congregation of 1,200 households minimum. Now, they don't give money for new congregations anymore. It's for retooling, it's for re-equipping, it's for bringing in Hispanic, bringing in people from Africa. Those churches will receive subsidies. You never receive the money to build a new building. You receive a subsidy that keeps you going year by year, and it decreases. It decreases. Just my first mission was a good example. 53 years ago, I was given $100,000. That was it. Go out to the Central Valley of California. They have no Lutheran church. Town of 5,000. We had to parcel that in such a way that some of it would pay my salary. Some would also pay for land. And some of that would also pay for building. So we ended up with $20,000 piece of land. If you've ever bought land in oil country, you talk about contracts, believe me. $60,000 for our church, which was 4,000 square feet, and $20,000 to support a pastor for 3 years. That's how it used to operate. It doesn't anymore. There is none available for new churches in new spots that are growing.
Resources, mission pastors and administrative people to help set that up
So
instead
they
of
don't
us
have
doing all that.
They don't have administrative people to do that? at the Synod level. They are working with us about pastoral support and looking at what that might look like. The other piece of that is when we talk about the money going in to support things, the bishop is very excited about what we're doing because he sees what we're already doing and doesn't see that happening many other places. So it's for him, he sees it as a positive, not just for us as a church, but he sees it as a positive for the entire synod. And that's why they're supporting us in this. And it's going to be, now, talk about funding, I'm going to completely undercut you, and I'm sorry, but I'm going to do it anyway. It will mean staffing if we go to another site, another church, right? Because right now you just got a second full-time pastor, which is what you had in 2009 when I came on. You have fewer part-time pastors than you had a year ago and way more than you had 2 years ago. And if you have 3 sites with 3 concurrent services with 2 pastors, I mean, my math's not that bad. I don't think it's that bad. We start running into an issue of coverage. So that's something we'll end up having to talk about as time goes on. But this is a huge piece that the Synod's been excited about. So there's something behind me here.
I'm Sarah Ferguson. I live down just north of Rohan, and I'm very excited for the opportunities. I love this church, and I'm glad that it's continuing to grow. I'm happy to help wherever y'all need, but I am of the opinion that I don't want to have a separate pastoral group. I like us all to be one family, whether we're in 3 locations or 1. Thank you.
And that's what we're going to maintain. Val?
I'm Val Newhart, and I just wanted to speak to Joel's question. I don't know where you are, Joel, somewhere. There is a program in the Synod called Mission Partners 100, and that money is used to support mission congregations who have no other means of starting or growing. And that is a letter that gets, when a mission developer is found, the Synod sends out letters through their Mission Partners 100 program, and it goes out to congregations or individuals on their mailing list, and then that money is collected for a specified amount of time to support that church. But it would not be used for a church like ours, which already is started and is supported.
Well, the other things that I think I touched on before, but I just want to reiterate, is that there's 186 churches in the Florida Bahamas Synod. Okay, Hope Lutheran Church is one of the only churches that continue to show growth. And obviously that's for a lot of reasons. You know, our pastoral staff, the things we do here, the excitement we have with all our ministries, that's part of the reason. And part of the reason is the villages, the way the villages is growing. So we got to continue with that, but they are excited about what we're doing and excited about where we've been and where we're going. And let's not forget that money follows mission.
Forgive me for not knowing the process. Hi, I'm Beverly. I was just wondering where the House of Hope gets or raises its money. Do they just do it privately for the new site and the new buildings?
House of Hope, and Mary, correct me if I'm wrong. For sure. House of Hope strictly is functional by, they have fundraisers and donations. Every Saturday they hold a car wash. So they are quote unquote self-sustaining with the help of many, many people. We get no aid from the government, from the state, for anybody. They raise enough money to keep going. It's about $650 a month per student to keep the doors open there. And so far, so good. Everything has been going along really well. So it's working, whatever's happening. Hello, Marilyn.
My name is Marilyn Scarda. I'm curious about all the building materials, walk-in cooler, the appliances, everything that we put in. Are we going to be allowed to take that out? And if so, where are you going to store it?
I know that Rick, our maintenance guy, and myself are going to go out there and figure out what exactly we want and what we're going to need. One of the things will be the walk-in cooler. That is something that we're going to have here. that we very desperately need here, that is out there. And I don't think there's other, maybe, I don't know, a few things that Rick and I are going to go out there and say we need this or that or the other. The rest of the stuff is, you know, we're going to let the House of Hope pick and choose what they want, because the agreement is that we could go out and take whatever we wanted out of the buildings, because they're just going to bring in a bulldozer and knock it down, whatever happens to be in it. So, where as far as the storage is concerned, you know, I don't know what they're going to do about that. So, that's something they got to deal with. But we are going to. There are a few things out there that we want, that we have, that we paid for, that we will take back, but very few, very, very little. So, does anybody else have any questions? Oh.
I am excited about the southern campus, but I want us to be careful with what we put our current pastors and staff through. My late husband was a pastor in Minnesota, and we had a large church that they had let two pastors and an intern go. He was the first pastor after that experience. It was a very troubled experience. And within about 6 years, he had a very major health-related issue that took his life a few years later, but it put him on disability when he wasn't expecting it, and neither was I. And so I love our pastors here. I want them to be healthy and be around for a long time. And I know that all these church responsibilities and people with different ideas coming from here and there, it creates a lot of stress. And I just want to make sure you protect yourselves from that. Thank you.
Thank you. The fortunate thing is our pastors are all young. Well, most of them. Most of them. John.
John Yost. I know Pastor Piper doesn't worry about finance, but I do occasionally. So can you refresh my memory? You said you'd like 680 or thereabouts. Did we assume a mortgage when we took over the House of Hope property, or did we refinance it and put it under our own name?
We put it under, we rolled it into our mortgage that we presently have.
Okay, so I presume we probably use that land as collateral then too. So will we no longer have that land?
No,
How are we
no,
going to...
no. Gary, you want to speak to that?
I wasn't here at the time, but I understand that we just rolled that mortgage into the collateral for this property and did not use the collateral on the House of Hope. So that's free and clear.
Okay. So have we done projections to see whether or not we can qualify for additional funds to build this church, or is this too far in the future to do that?
So you're asking about building a building already. We're not looking at doing that for a couple of years at least. This is my vision that we've talked about with council. How many of you were charter members or close to it here? Okay. Do you remember trying to get the land next door and you couldn't get it because the LCA said, "Oh, nobody will ever need that much land. That's unreasonable." If somebody had come to you and said, instead of you having to raise money for the land, if they'd said, "Here's the land free and clear," would that have made growing a church easier for you? So part of my understanding of this and the way we're moving forward is, rather than, I'm looking at what we're doing here at Hope as we currently stand, doing in the South. There's going to be a community that's going to grow out of this. That's going to be a congregation that's going to grow. And I believe that they're going to be people most invested in wanting to have a home church down there, having a building. So I'm not trying to talk about how we need to raise money for the building and everything for the people here. We might be a part of that because we decide to be, just like we're linked to people up north at Lake Weir. I think it's going to be for the community there, just like the pioneers here, to grow into that and own that facility and that building. So I think that's where most of the impetus is going to be for building and for paying for that more than here. Well, I'm sure people here will want to be invested, but I think that's more where things are going to be. And we're not looking to really do that until we have critical mass there that wants to do that. And somebody asked it before, there is not a time limit by when we have to have the building in. We get to use it for free, and we get to use it for as long as we want for the space. That's what John Rohan's person in charge told us. So this is kind of a long haul project to say, what do we need to do to get to a place to build a building? Is to let the people down there kind of decide. Part of this is going to be their visioning and their ownership.
Good idea, but then it seems to me like you're almost inviting to have two churches rather than one church. If the people down there are going to raise all the funds, so they're going to say, this is our church, and this is their church.
So they're raising all the funds but $2 million.
I'm sorry?
They're raising all the funds but $2 million, if you can use that model.
Yeah, but it almost invites a schism there, to me, anyway, that could split off.
No, no. They're not the only ones paying for it. I'm saying that's we're not going to talk about building until we have those people present and they're owning part of this process. I'm not looking to go build a building and then say, I hope we find the people to fill it. I'm looking to find, the reason why we're doing this whole thing at the rec center is to build up a community so we have critical mass for a community that's in wanting a building. And they'll be a major part of that decision and that move forward, financially and ownership-wise.
Okay. One other thing. Has there been any discussion or is there any concern about negative PR on this? Because it seems like this is really a great opportunity for our church. We spent $600,000, and now all of a sudden it's worth $2 million. Are we concerned the community might look at it that way and think, well, boy, they took advantage of the House of Hope men to further their own church?
No.
Okay. I would be concerned if I saw that and was not aware of all the inside what happened.
When we first purchased the property 5 years ago or whatever it was, close to 5 years ago, we knew that we weren't going to have the property. That's why we had the type of contract or lease that we have with House of Hope. You know, it was 5 years, which I think we're coming to the end of it. I believe November would be 5 years, with the clause that, you know, if we decide to sell the property, they have 6 months. Then we had 5 one-year clauses in there that they could renew it for a year, for the next 5 years, each year. And so we knew that the way the Villages was going and the things that were happening, eventually they would buy that property. So we all knew that. And it was a blessing that we were able to give to the House of Hope. We charged them $10 a year rent. Okay, that's what we charged the House of Hope, $10 a year, or was it 20? I'm not sure. I think we doubled it one year, didn't we, from 10 to 20? $10 or whatever it is. And, you know, but the thing of it is that, and I speak from my heart, because House of Hope is very close to me, as a lot of you know. And I'm, you know, if I didn't think that this was the right thing to push Hope Lutheran Church forward, that, you know, I would step up and say so. But I'm going to tell you what, it's for the good. House of Hope has always wanted to have their own property from day one. That was what we all strive for. Someday they would have their own property, their own buildings, and everything. Well, that day has come, okay? And the lives that community has saved, that is unbelievable. And as you all know, my son is one of them. So, having said all that, it's the right thing to do.
I would just say to John that I think if there is any negative PR, which we know there has been in some places, that it's up to each one of us to make the truth known about why we're doing this and how it's been planned, and that it's not about kicking out the House of Hope or taking something away from these men. It's about reaching out to more people with the love of Christ and making Christ known.
Does anybody else have any? Oh, Donna.
Here I am again.
Here you are again.
we keep using the word critical mass. Now, back in 1998, there was a critical mass of 79 people that got together and named House of Hope, Hope Lutheran Church. 1 year later, we were charter members, and we were the critical mass of 203 members, and we, at that time, had worked on paying for the property and securing the loan so that we could build this church. And once we were organized for 1 year, we told the synod that we no longer needed their mission support for our pastor, that we could do it ourselves. So you look at the 203 people, a year later we had more members, probably around 300. So it doesn't take that many households, I'm talking about numbers of people. So if we really work at reaching out to get more members, and I remember everybody who came to Hope Lutheran Church, they signed a paper, we got their addresses, we delivered home-baked cookies within the next week. We called them within 24 hours and welcomed them to Hope Lutheran Church. And we got members, and we loved every minute of doing that. So there are creative ideas to reach out once you start getting the new people that attend your congregation. So the fellowship is most important, and the reaching out and the critical mass per household. I mean, back when we started Hope Lutheran, we had a different mindset. Many people were probably used to giving more than the younger generation is today. And so our critical mass numbers will have to be greater, but they're also interested in different kinds of things. So anyway, I think it has a lot of possibility, but there's going to be a lot of work. And when I say work, we got tired of setting up and taking down everything at the La Hacienda Center and the Savannah Center, and that helped motivate the building of a new church.
Gracia Luoma, and I could be wrong, so correct me, Len, about House of Hope and what happened 5 years ago. But it was my understanding, too, that this opportunity we felt was, a sign from God, because the men had already been working with House of Hope, refinishing and supporting their buildings, and all of a sudden, the House of Hope found out that the national organization that had supported them and owned the land was going to sell it, and they would not be anymore. At least that's my understanding. And we had some men who immediately saw the potential to save that ministry, as well as, sure, in the later discussions to say this could be something that we could help their church, grow. But I think we forget that if it hadn't been for Hope in buying that property, renting for 5 years, all those men that they were able to help in those 5 years, their lives have been changed forever. And I don't think you can put a price tag on that. And unless I'm wrong, I think that, to me, that's a very important thing, that we had 5 years more of ministering to those men, and it'll continue if we all continue to support House of Hope, no matter what their address is.
Thank you, Gracia. Yeah, that's correct.
I wanted to have the final word, that's why I can't. Well, I want to just share that the greatest joy is to share Christ with everyone else. As a developer, as a mission developer, when I started with the ELC, actually I started with what Pastor Piper was referring to, that first model when they were trying to start a church. He started with $100,000, I started with $2,000 at that time, and it was a joy to simply share the gospel and talk to people about Jesus and bring them in. I want to tell you this morning, we received a new member, one of the new members that we received at Lake Weir, She's someone that my wife, when she was knocking on doors and started knocking on doors at Lake Weir in that area, she went and saw her in person, and she was one of the people that said, make sure to come back for us. Now she found home at Lake Weir. She found home here at Hope in this community. And what an amazing opportunity. As I'm listening and I'm thanking God for giving me the joy to serve here with you in your midst, and to what excited me about coming to Hope in the first place. Many people ask me, why did you come to Hope? Why did you come to the villages? I never knew that the villages existed before this last summer, right? But how God led us to come to this call. What excited me about this place was mission. Not that we have a large congregation of 2,000 or 2,500. I think we should be about 10,000 here. I really think and I believe that we are called to grow even more in this place here, right? We shouldn't be satisfied that we have 2,500 members. We should continue to share that gospel here and proclaim it and say we have enough room for 8,000 and 10,000 more to be part of Hope right here. Now, what's even greater and more exciting is that we can go to new places, north, south, east, west. God is calling us to many new places. And I tell you, nobody's going to share the gospel but us here. We are the ones who are going to do it. I mean, as the body of Christ. So I am just thankful for this. I'm really blessed to be part of it. And I invite you to join hands with us as the team that is serving here, and let God lead us into the future that I believe is going to be brighter than we've ever seen. So God is really good. Thank you.
My name is Tom Newcomer. My wife and I, Joan Newcomer, live in DeSoto, which is another village in Fenney, which everyone thinks of Fenney as the whole area. Fenney's just the beginning, and there's neighborhoods and villages in that area that's just unbelievable. If you haven't been there, you should go there. I'm also a Seventh-day Lutheran, one Saturday night, a 6 o'clock service since we've come here to church. I've also had the opportunity over the years, 15 years ago, I started a cold weather drop-in shelter for the homeless in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, and it has been a success. It's strictly faith-operated. We've been successful. We have a success rate which we believe is good, but nothing compared to 60% that House of Hope has. My point here is that there are people coming into DeSoto, McClure, Linden, and all those other communities that are younger people that are 55 to 65 years of age. And Joni and I walk a lot, and we see people, we talk to them, and that's something they don't have. They don't have a church. They're coming from Minnesota, they're coming from Michigan, they're coming from all over the United States. We even talked to a gentleman the other day coming in from California because he just couldn't take California anymore. And we don't want to touch that at all. But nevertheless, I think now is the perfect time to reach out and make something there so that people that are in our neighborhood that come here and says, I don't have a church, can walk or take their golf carts right to the church at the location. It's perfect. So I would certainly hope that our congregation would support it, and I believe it'll be as big a success as we are right here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, does anybody have anything else they'd like to questions or that they'd like to ask about the third site or anything else at this point? Any questions from anybody about anything else? Gene Barton.
As a Methodist, I will tell you a little bit about our striving for a third church or second church in our case. We started at Eisenhower and having services there. We have grown, and we grew over 3 or 4 years to have a significant attendance, and then the interest was obviously to start a new church down there. So they were able to negotiate, start the church. But the 2-church idea or 3-church idea has come up several times here. And I will tell you that it is it's a little issue because it's ours, mine, yours, and ours. we had the same thing with Helping Hands and Bargains and Blessings, and so those kind of issues will come up. But in the long term, your ability to reach out into the fastest growing area of the villages is one that you shouldn't pass up. And we, as House of Hope, will survive. We will continue to grow. We're not sure where yet, but believe me, we will continue that ministry, and we're not sure where and what size building, but we'll work it out. So thank you.
Thank you, Gene.
Jean Blackford. I am all for this. I think it is God's opportunity for us to grow. However, I need a clarification. Why is our 28 acres worth their 8?
So, do you want to say it together?
Yeah.
Location, location,
Location,
location. So here's part of the issue, and this is something we kind of skipped through this when he was giving some background, just so you have the awareness of it. One of the many iterations of this program we looked at with the villages was that they were going to put unnamed then, but I guess Megason Road was going to go right along our property where House of Hope is. And we were so excited because they were going to drop a major thoroughfare on top of our property. We're like, this is the best thing that could have ever happened. And we were there for like 6 months, and this was great. And then one day we went in for a meeting, they called us in and said, yeah, scrap all that, we've changed our minds. And they said, but don't worry, you can still have a church there. We can put a golf cart path through the back road of some development nearby where you go through like 3 different developments to get there. And we said, well, is that the only way through? Well, yeah, you'll be able to see it from the turnpike. You'll be able to see it from somewhere, but seeing it and getting to it are 2 different things. So the problem we had in looking at the property more and more is we'd be a church that was not accessible. If we were to use our land there, it's just not useful. It's also swampy. Quite a bit of the land's swampy in the north part. So for them, that's no big deal. I mean, they own dirt probably as big as the state of Florida that they own. So they can come in and they just amend soil, do what they need to do, and build it. We don't have those resources. So to use that land for us became an issue of it's not going to be accessible to be a church. Also, it was going to be a donut hole eventually surrounded by the villages, which for a House of Hope situation, having neighborhoods and things all abutting it or stores abutting land where you're trying to get people to pull away from society is not helpful either. So for them, it was a good idea. They weren't even looking to buy the property to swap it out originally. They were looking at just building along us. When we had the opportunity to see the property, and I said, we'll look at a swap, they showed us this land 2 days later. It was like 2 days later, they called us and said, hey, can you come in for a meeting? Rolled out a piece of paper and said, here's what it would look like with your current buildings on this piece of land. They had one of our architects do it that quick to show us what it might look like. We got excited because it becomes, in my language, it is the buckle of the new belt of the villages. And this is a quote from the developers. There is more villages yet to come than there currently exists. Yeah, I know. Oh, we're going to end at 42 or 466A or whatever. They meant 466A in like, Puerto Rico or some other place. I'm not really sure where. But it keeps growing and growing and growing. So the reality is this location is so perfect for a location for a church that when he mentioned the 12 other churches, they're not just hoping to get land. Their church is salivating to try to find land. And I will quote Gary Lester to us. He said, Mark, I am so excited for you as a pastor and for your congregation. He said, when I came to the villages and started North Lake Presbyterian outside the villages, so they had a little more freedom on stuff, he said, I was the only game in town. I got all my people. I got all your people, the Lutherans. I got all your old people, the Methodists. I got everybody because I was the only mainline church in the area. He said, that's going to be Hope Lutheran Church if you build in this site. He said, you're going to be able to offer kind of a mainline Protestant offering to people that there's not going to be anybody else around doing that. He said, the growth I received, even when the Methodist Church, Baptist Church, Lutheran Church ended up building, we lost some people that stopped coming here and started going there or who just diverted there instead of to us. He said, but by then we had critical mass where we were known as the church. And this really blew me away. He said, I worked really hard to get Presbyterian taken out of our name over at North Lake. He said, we just became the church of the area. He said, you all have an opportunity to do that in the South Villages, to have that kind of just impact on the community. So that's why it's, you know, we look at 29 versus 8 approximately, that's the buyout. It's just the location is so pristine and 100% usable because of the water retention.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I forgot to say my name last time. I'm Peg Piper. Hi.
Oh, thank you.
At the risk of giving a promotional ad to the House of Hope, all of you probably received a letter not too long ago asking for pledges. So those of us who cannot physically support House of Hope through going out and doing physical labor have the opportunity to support with our dollars. And it can go right in the offering envelope, and our church will send it on to them because they're both 501c3s, so they're both tax deductible. So I'm just offering that as a possibility for those of you who really have an interest in the ministry at House of Hope.
Thank you.
Great suggestion, never knew that. Kevin Body again. One of the things that we've talked about throughout my limited time here being a member is the deed restrictions on this property. And time being what it is, I would only imagine that the deed restrictions have gotten more limited down in, you know, as like for new properties. In other words, meaning that the south property, I would assume, would have more deed restrictions than this one. I guess the question is that true? And if it is, what are some of the differences between that you foresee for the deed restrictions for the new property that weren't put on this property at the time?
I can't answer that because I don't know what the deed restrictions are here or what they were. I know a few of the bigger ones, but we do have a book that
well, there was an
the
exhibit.
villages gave us.
Well, there's an exhibit C that talks about the deed restrictions.
Right.
Is that, when people talk about the deed restrictions, is that what you're talking about specifically, or is there, I figured there was much more than that.
Not really. I mean, they're just, Bob, you want to answer that?
What you have attached to the contract, you see the page, but it's probably a 20-page document, which is the village development standards. No, I know, that's what I said, it's not attached. The copy we have are, I think it says 2012. So they haven't modified those in the past few years. Those are the ones that they are telling us about. The only deed restriction we're going to have is on the exhibit, which is Exhibit C, which prohibits some uses of our property for, you know, a liquor store, right. That type of thing.
Yeah.
That's the only deed restriction we're going to have.
You can still give out wine at communion, though, right?
That's right.
Okay, good.
That's right. And we have specifically put in the contract, if you haven't caught it, that we can have a church. We can also have a church school if we want to, and a daycare facility.
I did see that. Thank you.
Okay.
Fred O'Brien. The original contract we had here, I believe, did not allow us to have a daycare facility or a school. So we actually have more liberal provisions now than we had back then.
Thank you for that. Okay. Anybody else? Going once, going twice. Pastor Mark, would you mind closing us in prayer?
Let's stand. Grab a hand next to you if you can. Gracious God, we are poised at a great future. And we have been praying, many of us long and hard, about where you would direct us, what doors might be open to us. And Lord, as we see this opportunity, we pray you give us wisdom and you would guide us by your Spirit. But Lord, we don't just pray to work out something with land, but you would start to stir in the hearts of the people who are already in the southern villages, the people who have not even gotten here yet. That your Spirit would start to work on them to be open, Lord, to the hearing of your gospel, to feel the grace of Christ take a root within them and blossom and give them new and abundant life. Lord, we're blessed and we feel honored to be part of your program of grace. And Lord, sometimes it's a little daunting. Sometimes it can feel a little overwhelming. But you never promised it would be easy. You promised us it would be good. And we thank you for being here with us even now. We trust that, Lord, as you go forth before us, you would call us to follow after you. You would lead us into the places we need to be, that you bring us to the paths of the people who need to hear the message of good grace in Christ, that we would know Christ more fully in the work we do and make Christ more fully known wherever we might end up. And we pray that not only for us, but for House of Hope as well. For it's in the name of Christ, our Lord and our Redeemer, in whose name we pray. Amen. Serve the Lord. Thanks be to God.